You are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome in another week and another session. Today, we are talking about neuromarketing with Louisa Dunbar, and she's going to talk us through user experience, the conversion on your website, and what should you do on your website that makes sense to the user who is visiting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Louisa.
All good.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Very happy to be here.
So we have almost a half an hour type of presentation, and there will be Q&A in the end. Say hello to see who is here with us today. Remember to, hi Lenka. Remember to give access to StreamYard if you want us to share your question on the screen. So you need to grant access to StreamYard. And yeah, we're looking forward to start this. I will remove myself and where you can share your screen, Louisa, and we'll be ready to go. Okay?
Sure, sounds good. Brilliant. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to talk with you all today. So yeah, today I wanted to give a talk on an exciting topic, but still a very serious topic, the field of neuromarketing for the web. So what I'll do is I'll give you an insight into what it's all about, first of all, the tool and the tools we use. And then in the second half, I will give you some insight on how you can actually optimize your own website or the website you're working on using some behavioral science theories. But first, I wanted to share with you how I actually got into this, because it's always good to understand, the reasons behind these things. And a lot of it actually stem from parenting. So for those of you who have children or have relatives with children, I'm sure you can relate to the completely irrational reactions to seemingly insignificant things children can sometimes have. So whether that's the kind of monumental breakdown because you couldn't follow their vague instructions for a game they have just made up, or the fact that you've asked them 1,000,000 times to brush their teeth to absolutely no avail. We've all been there in one way or another. But it got me really intrigued. So what exactly was going on in that little brain of my daughter's to get her to react in that way? Basically, I just wanted to understand and get any insight whatsoever that might help me to get a grip of these situations, so they weren't so blooming frustrating for all of us. And my research uncovered all sorts of insights into how her brain was developing at each point in those early years. And by physically just seeing how those neurons in her brain were adapting and how her brain was growing and evolving, it suddenly allowed me to become much more sympathetic to her tantrums and quirks, which is half the battle. And with that information, I was able to then apply the correct logic to help her through them and then ultimately avoid them as much as possible. And actually, I'm pleased to say home life is much more manageable now, although I definitely don't claim to be a child psychologist. So it made me think, what if this logic could be applied to websites, to the online user experience? To create the optimal user experience, a business really must be user-centric. So this isn't a completely new concept, but the world of business still has a long way to go yet to fully get there. Most businesses find it so easy just to talk about themselves and what they do, what they're offering or selling, etc., etc. But to be truly user-centric, it means putting the user at the heart of absolutely everything that they do and everything that you say. So one example is that rather than talking about your products and services and how great they are, instead talk about the problems that you're solving and then explain how. Talk about the benefits rather than the features, etc., etc. It's basically a form of empathy which oozes through every pore of the business. That is what being user-centric is all about. So ultimately, that connection with users on that deeper level brings about a much more effective marketing and, of course, the results too. And this is what neuromarketing, or consumer neuroscience, to give it its other name, is all about. And in terms of the web, you may be familiar with the term UX or user experience. So far, this is as close as we've come today to being user-centric online. And we've plodded along assuming that this is the thing that we should be doing as web designers. Designers are simply following best practices with this approach. They're using examples they've seen on other websites, etc., that have worked well, and therefore they assume that they will also work the best for their site too, which isn't always the case. So I like to challenge things, especially when nothing has much changed in this industry for the last few years. So drawing on my parenting experience, I wondered if it was possible to get an even deeper insight into what the user is actually experiencing online. What if we could actually see into their brains? And what if we could read their subconscious? 95% of the decisions we make are subconscious. And on websites, a lot of decisions are being made without realizing all the time. But before we explore that idea further, I just want to take a step back again. So in the past and present, businesses who want to optimize their websites and improve the performance, they go about user testing to get feedback on what needs to be improved and how. I'm sure you've heard of this. Many of you have probably experienced this firsthand, perhaps, and the more traditional methods of user testing. So there's conversion rate optimization, otherwise known as A/B testing or split testing. And the idea is that you serve up different concepts, designs, or layouts to different groups of users to test which concept is more effective. Then there's also usability testing, where users are observed and questioned about their experience whilst they're interacting and using a particular website. And then there's also eye tracking and heat maps, which give insight into what features are being seen or getting attention at any particular time on the page. And while any form of user testing is better than no testing at all, there are limitations to these approaches which neuromarketing seeks to overcome. The main limitation is the unreliability of users' conscious thoughts and actions. Because so much of our behavior and decision-making happens at a subconscious level, users are often unable to give truly informed responses to questions because they only know about their conscious thoughts. I hope that makes sense. So the subconscious, the true driver of their actions and decisions, remains just that. It remains outside of their consciousness. A really good example of the unreliability of users' verbal feedback is in relation to Red Bull. You might have heard about this. So before it was launched, the business went through the usual rounds of focus groups, gathering feedback, etc. And the overwhelming consensus was that everybody disliked it. They all said it tasted of wee. And then the rest is history. Obviously, we all know how successful Red Bull are. So I bet they're pretty glad they didn't listen to that feedback. So aside from the inaccuracy of that self-reporting feedback method, such testing also fails to take into account the user's emotional journey through a purchase process. People mostly make decisions on an emotional level. So there really is a huge gap here that we're missing out on. So A/B split testing can actually be a really excellent measure of a website's performance, but it typically needs really high traffic levels for one and a lot of patience back and forth to produce statistically significant results. So the more we understand about what makes users click and why they make the decisions they do, the more changes we can make to a website to improve conversion rates, and we can get there much quicker than with conventional methods. So yeah, this brings me on to neuromarketing, and which is what I see as the future of user testing. So what exactly is it? What exactly is neuromarketing or consumer neuroscience? So basically, it's the commercial use of neuroscience tools and insights to better understand consumer responses to different kinds of marketing efforts. So neuromarketing essentially blends the best aspects of traditional user testing with the ability to reach into your customer's subconscious, to really fully understand what motivates them, what frustrates them, and how we can pull on their psychological levers to make them choose to buy from you. So yeah, how exactly does this apply to the online user experience? So in relation to websites, an area which we are concentrating purely on at the moment, is basically about better understanding the responses to the user experience. It helps us identify friction points on the site and to better understand the effects of these emotionally on the user as well. It takes the uncertainty out of the game and helps us to pinpoint exactly how the experience is making the users feel. And with this information, we understand the gravitas better and can provide a more effective resolution much, much quicker than other methods. So the tools we use for these insights are really very specific, but they are ever evolving as well. And they include eye tracking, biometrics, EEG, and fMRI. Now, fMRI is functional MRI scans. And they're basically where somebody is in a scanner and the user or participant's brain is being observed whilst they're watching or eating or interacting with something. But we're not going to talk about this one too much because especially in terms of websites, the technology isn't quite there yet. And on the most part, it is prohibitively expensive. But let's go through the others. So eye tracking. Eyes are the gateway to our brains. They've been known to give away our deepest secrets. Eye tracking tests have actually shown our eyes can reveal the truth about how we're thinking and feeling. They have been capable of revealing cheating spouses, revealing racist tendencies, and much more trivial things like general colour preferences. So this is why eye tracking is an important tool in our toolbox, in the neuromarketer's toolbox. But alone, it's just not enough, as it doesn't provide us with any of that emotional insight I was talking about. So it's really important that we combine this alongside biometrics. So biometrics is where our body responds to stimuli before we're even consciously aware of the emotions we're experiencing. So before we're stressed, before we're happy, before we're sad, our body gives off an indicator, telling, which we can pick up on to make us aware of what we're actually feeling. So, for example, it gives off physiological signals such as an increase in temperature if we feel trust, or perspiration if we're stressed, or aroused emotionally, whether that's positively or negatively. So monitoring this can actually give us a real unique insight. And here I just wanted to show you a quick video of a bit of biometric testing that we did on one of our clients' websites. And so what we did is we combined it with eye tracking. So the dots you see in this video are where their gaze is concentrated, and this graph area down here is the perspiration levels they're being monitored as they're browsing the website. So we haven't given them any specific task to perform. We've just asked them to browse it just for the purpose of this demo. So hopefully you can see this, but there's a line here that just shows the time and where they are sort of going through the website. And as you see, the dots there are where the eyes are concentrated. And at the moment, they're just browsing through the website. It's like they're having a read on the About page. So nothing too strenuous at this stage. We've not asked them to do anything particularly hard. So you can see all the levels down here are quite low. And now they are navigating to the product page itself. So there you go, there's a lot of e-bikes that they're browsing. And now they're starting to look at the product filter on the left here. And you can see down here that the levels are starting to increase, and the perspiration levels are starting to increase. So we can start to understand that emotionally that they're having a slightly harder time, perhaps, or there's more intensity in what they're doing. And from that point of view, we can deduce that it's not just a simple browsing experience, that part of it. It requires more effort from them. And we might deduce, alongside some other feedback that we asked from them, that they found that quite confusing. Maybe it was slightly stressful because they didn't know what what they should be filling out, and that's why the stress levels appear to rise at this point in time. So it gives you a rough idea of how these technologies can work together. But yeah, basically, in summary, with this kind of insight, we can start to understand much better what our customers and users are going through, and then can start to rethink things which seem to be causing those stress or concern or friction. So we'd look to optimize that to make the journey much easier for them, essentially. So EEG, electroencephalography. So this is essentially, you might have seen it, a cap with electrodes or sensors that gets placed on the head, and it monitors brain activity. So the technology for this is ever evolving, and we're currently actually working with UCL, University College London, to find out whether it can give us sufficient insights into the online user experience. So although there are companies out there that claim to use this technology for insights, it's not certain exactly how accurate it can be or what insights it can give. It is also hugely subject to interference due to the delicacy of the sensors. So I really have to show you this Porsche advert where they claim that EEG gives them insight into what will stimulate the brain the most, the G-force experienced by flying a fighter jet or the G-force experienced by driving a Porsche. So I'll just forward it to the best bit.
Your room will be fitted with an EEG monitor to measure his brain activity. The data will be analysed by Dr. Robert van der Linden.
Basically, we're going to measure how stimulated your room's brain is. We're going to look at an area of the brain that releases a hormone called dopamine.
That was a little 2.5G motion. Just the only way we're taking your curve. You're doing it in a row. I'm not doing 4G currently. I'll make this deep left turn. I'm testing out this people test.
Now, for the first time, we see lots of activity in the visual and prefrontal cortex. We see the nucleus accumbens light up due to the release of a huge amount of dopamine. That's really, I can hardly describe. You should try it yourself.
Now that we know the effects of the fighter jet on the brain, it's time to find out. Can driving a Porsche compare?
It's very similar to the takeoff in a jet.
Let's look at the results. This is Jeroen's brain activity in the Porsche, and here is his brain activity collected in the fighter jet. As we can see, the dopamine levels are higher in the jet. However, overall there are clear similarities. For example, in both images, we can see the excitement centers lighting up.
Based on the results, taking a hard left in a Porsche is actually comparable to taking a hard left in a fighter jet.
So you get the idea. It looks fancy, doesn't it? And very, very convincing. But it's actually essentially what we call complete neurobollocks. Excuse the language. There's absolutely no way those sensors would work in those situations with all that interference and banging about. So just be warned about adverts and things like that. So yeah, definitely back down on earth now. There's a warning to be heeded from this. You really do need to know what you're doing with these tools. There are so many biases that can skew results and the conclusions that are drawn from them. And this is why we work with neuroscientists from UCL to stay at the forefront of this technology. and the insights in this space, but also to ensure that the results that we deliver are accurate and not subject to these biases. So in summary, once we understand the reactions and emotions of our users using neuromarketing, we can then adapt the user experience to optimize it better for their needs. We do this second part by combining the insight that has been gathered using the eye tracking and biometric tools with behavioural design theories. So we basically propose alternative layouts and designs which can then therefore improve the user experience, ultimately or improving conversions as well, and obviously website results. So now that you know the theory behind it all, I wanted to give you some actual takeaways from this session, which you can consider for your own websites today to increase the chances of success. So here are some of the most commonly used theories to consider. The halo effect. So this is a cognitive bias in which we accredit a good-looking site to a more professional, trustworthy, and relatable business. So essentially, the better it looks, the more likely we will be to stick around and convert. It's really hard to give any advice on how exactly to make a website beautiful in general, but generic advice could include plentiful white space, keep content really simple, use clear modern fonts, professional photos, a clean modern colour palette, essentially. The visual depiction effect. So this is a really simple theory which says that we're more likely to purchase items that are accompanied by somebody who's actually interacting with that product. It works because it helps us visualize ourselves owning it, or using it, or wearing it, or eating it. It just makes the product or service more relatable, makes it more real and relevant. And it's the same theory that has worked for years in shops. So, you know, you'll remember from the times when we were allowed to go to shops that clothes were modelled by mannequins. And those ones are the ones that are most likely to fly off the shelves because you can see them and how they will hang, how they will look, etc. So if you are, I don't know, selling food, for example, Deliveroo do this really well. They always have photos of hand holding the food or a spoon in the soup, or, you know, you could always have a hand holding a glass of wine, that kind of thing. But if you're a service business, think about how this same effect can be captured. It still can be done. And the theory of implied motion. So this is the theory that movement catches our eye. I think that's pretty obvious, but what we don't want to do is add loads of moving parts to our websites, as it will just cause distraction and potentially result in cognitive strain. So if you want to pull your user's eye to a particular part of the page, perhaps it's a button, a link, or a form, it's worth considering an image of implied motion. So much like this example of a drink being poured, or perhaps somebody running. It doesn't even have to be a photo. It could just be an illustration of some sort of motion. Even text in italics works to the same effect, or even just use the use of arrows. So herd instinct or herd identity. So this is the changing of our own behaviour to conform with the behaviour of the others in the group. So we basically look to other people for cues on how we should behave. And the best example of this in practice on websites is the 5-star rating system, detailing the number of people who've perhaps rated a product or service. So, for example, 134 people also bought this product. And also, if we see something that is selling out, we assume it must be good. And this can be really nicely linked in with the next one, which is the scarcity effect. So this is all about how we value goods that are in short supply over those that are abundantly available. It's the aversion to loss. We just don't want to miss out. It's innate in us. It basically encourages the users to make a decision and commit sooner than they otherwise might have. So, for example, they may see something that they like to buy, but then get distracted and go off and do something else and then forget, or just, you know, go to a competitor because they don't know who they want to buy it from, but just forget it might be you. So by adding in something like only 5 left in stock, or only space remaining for 1 more training session this month, book now so you don't miss out, will hopefully capture their attention for long enough to actually ensure that they actually go through the process of buying or signing up. And if they have a distraction, then it might be enough to pull them back and make sure that they complete that process. The endowment effect, this one's really quite simple. Basically, people just place a greater value on things that we feel ownership over. Simply just having the word my creates this feeling of ownership, making us value the basket more. So just change it from your basket to my basket. The Ikea effect. So this is the theory that labour leads to love. People place greater value on products that they partially created due to what we call it the effort heuristic. So perhaps allow someone to piece together their own service or product on your website if you can. We implemented on one of our clients' websites a boat builder. They sell boats. And just by allowing the consumer, the user, to select the options that they wanted on their boat, allowed them to just become more emotionally involved in that end product. And then obviously having a nice clear call to action, which takes them to that next step. Authority. So I don't know if you've read it, but Robert Cialdini's famous book, Influence and the Psychology of Persuasion, he talks about authority and how we are so easily persuaded by it. And basically, it seems to be human nature to follow and believe those in authority. Harnessing this on your website could include photos or quotes of those in authority, such as doctors or thought leaders in your industry. Or even better, get them to provide reviews or unique insights on your product or service, some kind of endorsement. The incomplete effect. People seem to pay much greater attention to and remember things that are incomplete. It appears that just by introducing a little bit of cognitive strain, we're able to increase the memorability of that content or encourage users to complete a task. So example uses of this are step guides and or clever copywriting techniques throughout the site to encourage click-throughs. Nudges, behavioural nudges. So these are elements we can add to a design or user experience which encourage users to do what we'd like them to do next. Basically, we're just helping them or aiding them in their process, in their journey. A good example of this, users are innately drawn to photos of people, even more so if they are actually babies. Faces get much more attention than anything else, and you can see this in the first example, which demonstrates a photo with an overlay of the results of an eye tracking test. The red colours are showing the focus of their gaze, and you can see it's all focused over the baby's face here in this left photo. But taking this then to the next step, we can use it to actually train the user's eye on a particular part of the screen you want to draw their attention to. And we do this by choosing photos where it looks like the person is looking at that area of the screen that we want to draw their attention to. So, and we can see this quite clearly working here. Again, this is with the eye tracking overlay, and the baby, people are firstly looking at this baby's face, and then they're also looking at the text here, which you can see is in quite contrast to the first one. And yeah, finally, the paradox of choice. So this is the theory that the more options we have, the harder we find it to make a decision. It results in high cognitive load and basically can put us off buying or leave us with buyer's remorse. So it's really important to keep things as simple as possible on your website. So limit the options that you're giving users and their choices as much as you can. And this applies to all things from the number of products you have on the site to how many call to actions you have, or buttons on a page, or how many select options you have in a form as well. So my last word on this is that a lot of people tend to be worried about that fine line between persuasion and manipulation. And it's actually not such a fine line after all, really. And so we don't really need to worry about it. Manipulation is basically trickery, the use of what we call dark patterns to trick people into doing something or buying something that they never intended to do. So obviously that's pretty bad and it's immoral and definitely not the same as what we do. So all we're doing is gently persuading, enabling them to make their decision, enabling them to make the decision faster than they otherwise would have. It's really impossible to just persuade someone to do something they didn't want to do. You can have a good old debate about this subject though, and still the conclusion would be the same. So yeah, I'm going to finish on that note. But if you're intrigued and want any more tips, then yeah, feel free to follow me, as I'm always sharing those kind of things on social media. But thank you very much.
Hello. Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes,
Hi.
I can.
Wow. The one you said about just changing it from your basket to my basket, like we don't think of these things. It's just so interesting. Like such a simple thing can make such a difference. And the one about the baby as well. Well,
yeah, they're simple things really.
yeah. Let's see. I think we're starting to have some questions. Suggestions for a good use of suggestions for a good use of reciprocity effect is you have something at the bottom of your site. Not sure. I have something at the bottom of your site. Okay.
So reciprocity, yes, that's a great one. So that's basically for anyone who, rather than just asking people for their commitment, it's important to show that you are willing to help them as well. So people are far more likely to respond and think that they owe you if you are giving them something to start off with. So that's what the reciprocity effect is. So yeah, on a website, and we've done this with clients, it's about helping the business understand what they can give away for free, essentially, before, which will then allow the user to get slightly more emotionally attached to that business in some way. So if you're a service business, it's about giving away free insight. Perhaps it's a download of some sort, a checklist, or a comprehensive guide that they can take away, and then they'll hopefully refer to it on a regular occasion, and then eventually come back to you and sign up for your service. With products, it's a little bit harder to do, but again, it's about giving away insight and expertise. That's the main sort of use that we implement on websites to kind of bring in that reciprocity effect.
You also mentioned something about when you see the product with with a human being interacting with it, and I relate so much to that, especially when it comes to products that are clothes, for example, or shoes. I've been now struggling to find shoes for month and month, and I always want to see not the shoes on its own, but I want to see when a model is wearing it. And now there is this feature of the 360, or a video of the model actually walking with it, and how. And this, I now find myself always going to buy these ones, that are on a model or in a video, or 360. And yeah, for products, I think they also have a lot of. It's easier to buy a product rather than a service. I also agree that.
Yes, definitely. I think. From the leftovers of the first lockdown, online clothes retailers were struggling a bit because they couldn't get models to model their the clothes, and so they just had to photograph them as they were, laid out.
Yeah.
And I personally remember trying to buy some clothes online and finding it very hard, because you can't imagine how it's going to look on you, can you? So yes, it's using models obviously helps when it comes to clothes, but yeah, also food, and just imagining yourselves there eating it. It puts you more emotionally involved in it.
Yeah, cool. We have another question. I can't see from who, but we can share it. How does neuromarketing work with privacy, biometrics, and EEG seems intrusive?
Yeah, it's all about making sure that we don't associate the data with an actual person. So no personal details are kept or stored, and it's just about, gosh, the word's gone off the top of my head now. But yeah, just making sure
Privacy,
it's
information privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a sensitive topic for sure, because especially with heart rates, everybody has a unique heart rate. So it's really, it can be identifiable. So it's about making sure that we don't track those features that give away a person's actual unique identifiers. So everything that we do is only tracking things that are kind of
anonymous. Yeah. No, I agree. It is a big topic about, like data and how much you're giving, and lots of controversy around the companies that are gathering data. But the way I see it, maybe because I work in marketing, the way I see it is that we need data, and not only in marketing, but in health and any kind of, governments needs data, because it helps you build a research, build a study, and actually improve, and maybe be able to help someone find what they need, rather than assume that as a company. So yeah, absolutely, data is important, but privacy has always been something that should have been regulated.
Absolutely, it's important to regulate what you're doing, and each business has its own responsibility to follow those rules. So it's and any user participant that gets involved in these kind of studies would be fully made aware of exactly what the data is being used for, and and wouldn't go further than that.
We also have a question from Lenka. When it comes to language, is there any research that shows certain words, phrases, or emotional tones that seem to perform better in converting people?
So in terms of, well, I'm not sure whether it's language or just copy in general, but it's really important to avoid the sort of sales pitch. Nobody likes being sold to in that sort of cold way. So it's just about forming your the copy on your website, so that you're engaging, you're resonating with the audience, and that you understand their problems, their needs. So once you've done that research, the audience research, and you know where they're coming from, you know what their problems are, you know what their emotional state is, then you can accommodate for that in the copy that you produce on the website. So anything that basically is going to grip them and make them sort of take a step back and go, oh, this business really gets me, and that's and they sort of say, oh yes, that seems to work, they know me, therefore this product must be 100% right for me, or this service must be 100% right for me. It just shows that you understand your user more than others. But it's about resonating and having that emotional connection as much as we can do through a web interface. Obviously, when you're talking to somebody, it's much easier. We really do need to go that one step further on our websites than what is currently standard out there. Standard out there is just sales. I'm going to sell my product. This is what my product's about. This is what my service is about. We do this, we do that. It's about avoiding those tones and just, as I say, resonating emotionally more and understanding the users, and conveying that through the copy and the language you use on the site.
Yeah. To add on like a question, so because when you're going to a website, there is a difference between having a button with call to action that it says sign up here, or for example something long and unclear. So I think, do you think that these kind of call to action words that are clear and not necessarily inventing the wheel do convert people better? Should we keep using these, or should we like research or experiment with other words specifically for when it comes to call to action buttons?
Yeah, so call to action buttons, definitely there are some that work better than others. And yeah, I think some testing does need to be done though, because users vary so much from one site to the other. There shouldn't ever be a standard necessarily. I mean, you might have a call to action that says sign up, but if you change that to say sign up free, then that's going to resonate more, and I think will definitely convert better. Or even just sometimes I've seen big results just changing it to sign up now rather than sign up. So it's just there are these are all kind of behavioral nudges just to help the user along. So yeah, for sure there are lots of examples like that have been done on big sites, and results have been reported back. But again, I would always say test first before you implement big changes in this, if it's going to potentially be worth hundreds of thousands or more for those conversions.
Yeah. Cool. We still have another question. Let's see. What are the most common mistakes about practice that you see on websites?
Yeah, there's loads. But I think the biggest one that I've seen is what I've already said, actually, the fact that businesses just talk about themselves the whole time and don't try and put themselves into the user's shoes. So it's just avoid the selling and try and just resonate with the user instead. Other things, oh my goodness, so where do I start? Not having a clear value proposition on the homepage. So when you first go onto a homepage, a user needs to see exactly who you are, what you do, what your USP is and why you're different to your competitors, and whether the product is right for them. So are they the target audience that the business is trying to attract? So yeah, if it just says welcome to company name, or some obscure strapline which doesn't really tell the user what they do, then how can you expect the user to really know what how can you expect the user to stick around? Basically, they don't really know that this website is for them. But yeah, having that clear value proposition on the homepage in a banner area or something similar is one of the main things that I'd recommend, but also the biggest faux pas when it's not actually being used. But also in the same context, when you have those banner images when you first go on the site and you've got the scrolling text, so you have some text on it and then it scrolls very quickly to the next and you can't read it, there's just too much going on. Static is the best.
Yeah. If I can add, actually, I just noticed something yesterday in one of the websites that I found annoying is, some websites have their own sitemap, but it's not all visible to people. I think sitemap is a great thing to have on a website. Usually it's in the lower bottom. What do you think of that? And the reason I brought it up is because I was looking for something in a website and I know they have that page, but apparently it wasn't part of their sitemap. So you need to actually type it, which I find is not a good practice. But do you recommend to have the sitemap on the website below? Is there any theory about that?
So do you mean sort of having a link to it from the footer maybe, or something like that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so sometimes it's the navigation on top, but some websites have the whole sitemap and below, like this is what we have under About Us, this is what we have under Services, and so I find it very helpful just to look at it, and actually if I'm looking for certain information, I'm like, yeah, this is where to look actually.
I think those sites where you've needed to do that aren't as user friendly as they could be.
Yeah.
I don't think if you plan a website, the structure, the sitemap itself, well enough, then you shouldn't have to replicate or list it all out in that manner. It should be really intuitive for you to find the information that you're after anyway. So yeah, having it in the main navigation, that should work. That should be sufficient, in my opinion. There may be, you know, exceptions to this rule, I think, but yeah, in general, it's having a sitemap on a specific page, perhaps, which lists out all the different pages. We only usually do that for SEO purposes or something like that, or accessibility purposes for, you know, the people who are maybe visually impaired or similar. So yes, it would be interesting to see that example that you're talking about. But yeah, in general, it makes me think that maybe they haven't quite got the user experience right in the rest of the site if they have to include it like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So there you go. Maybe a bad practice to have to use a sitemap, because it means your navigation is not as clear.
Yeah, exactly.
We have another question. Do you have any tips to encourage a journey through the website besides call to action buttons and internal links?
Oh, that's an interesting question. To encourage a journey besides call to action buttons and internal links. So basically, without clicking on anything, how can they navigate through the website? I think, yes, I think you'd still use buttons.
Yeah, you still need some sort of communication.
Yeah, but
you know, like there's someone to do something.
Yeah.
But I think if I understood correctly, how we can also rephrase the question is that what could keep the user longer on your website, even if you don't have call to action buttons, that this is the next thing that you should check, or this is an internal link and basically I think it's just, you know, how can you keep a user longer on your website?
Well, yes, from that point of view, it's about creating engaging content and ensuring that it can be easily found on the website as well. So yeah, you might have, so by, you know, it's not always about the priority isn't always about keeping the user on the website for as long as possible. It's just about getting them to their destination really as quick as possible. So we need to prioritize the sort of goals you know, companies have. You might want to keep them on longer. For example, if they've come to your site via you know, a link to a blog or something like that, you might want to keep them on, and by just showing them other articles that could interest them that are of a similar nature, or, you know, they might have come on to the site directly to one of your service pages or product pages, but realize that that's not quite right for them. So how do we keep them on the site to guide them to on a journey through to another option? And that's all about offering up, you know, you may also be interested in, or this is similar to. If this is not quite right, then why don't you get in touch, because we can make something bespoke for you, or, you know, that kind of thing. It's all about the copy that you use, the language that you use. So we'll go back to, you know, what we were originally talking about on that subject, and just being helpful. Yeah, so I suppose that does sort of answer the question. So how do you encourage a journey through the websites? Being helpful. It depends what that journey is, obviously, but yeah, offering up content which will help the user, what you think that they might be interested in, what you think they might be needing, and stuff like that. So it's obviously it needs before you even design a website, you need to understand or have an understanding of what the different journeys might be through the site before you can really address these points. So yeah, that's something you have to kind of take a step back and understand the possible journeys before you can kind of
exactly
come to the conclusions.
Something related to that, there are average industry time or session time for websites. So if a website has blogs, for example, there's an average industry time that, for example, that says the ideal time should be something like 7 minutes long blog. So sometimes if you know the average, you can't just bring in a blog that is, for example, 20 minutes and so on. So I would advise usually checking always like industry, your industry, what is the average time for people to stay on your website or what they actually do. We can learn a lot from websites just as a user visiting other websites and knowing this.
Yes.
Let's see, we don't have another question, but like I was saying, such a good point, Louisa. It's about knowing your goal and helping people to complete the desired action as soon as possible. Fair point. Sometimes it might be to stay longer and learn more, but in the case of a landing page, completion of the form, aka conversion, is all you need from people.
Exactly. Yeah, it does depend 100% on the journey that you want the user to go through. Not always about the time on site needed. And
if they found what they need, one of the brilliant things I like on websites, if they have a lot of content, especially when they have blogs or products, is the search bar. To be able to write exactly what I want and be like shown results that are very close to what I need to find, and not having to like have a search warrant to go to a website and just like try to investigate to find what I need. So it's about finding what you need as soon as possible. I think people appreciate that.
Making it as easy as possible for the user.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we have any more questions, but I can see some comments of people saying interesting, about interesting, not thought of conscious thought that way. That was from James when you were talking about the conscious and unconscious. And we don't have more questions, but that was really good. For people who are going to watch the replay, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and we will try to respond to them. And if you'd like to get in touch with Louisa, also we will put the details in the description for people if they would like to get in touch with you. Do you have anything else to add, Louisa? If you have anything to offer or something you would like us to go and check or read?
No, I just want to say, thank you so much. It's been lovely to be here and talk to you and answer the questions. I love the subject. I could talk about it for ages. But thank you very much. And as I said at the end of my slides, you feel free to follow me. I do just share a lot of content on this side of things, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn. So I hope to see some of you there.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you for all the people who are thanking us, and we don't know who they are, but thank you so much, Louisa. That was really interesting and definitely worth, as you said, taking a pause just to see how we can help our users on our website and make the journey better for them. A last comment: inspiring it has focused my thoughts in a good way. That's good, David. Excellent. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you for your time, Louisa.
You're welcome. Thanks so much again for having me.
Thank you, and bye-bye, everyone.